character is set. Like it's our, the character is in a circumstance. The character is in a plot. It's everything. But nobody has ever taken on the challenge of kind of bringing that character to life. And so being given the opportunity to bring the character from the page to the stage, rhymes, okay. Bring the character from the page to the stage. That's just it's so fascinating because there is a decent amount of work that goes into that. And so not having, something to go off of and just kind of creating it from your mind. It's kind of like choreography or even a writer, like taking an idea, a seed of an idea, and then blossoming it into a flower. It's kind of like that. You have this seed of a character. It's kind of written on the page, but you get the opportunity to bring it to its full length. You get to create the memories, and you get to create the relationships, and you get to create, you get to do everything. And that is so cool to me.
That's actually amazing because I imagine that comes with a lot of responsibility. And for you, how do you think about how you approach bringing that character from the page to real life? Because I'm sure for every different person, they have a different way of how they would execute it. And I'm curious, how do you think about that for yourself?
Well, my first step would be to go through the script to figure out what's written. What did the author write about it first? What did the author write about my character? Write that down. What does the character say about myself? Write that down. What do other characters say about my character? Write that down. And what do the stage directions tell about my actions versus my words? And that once I write all of that down, just kind of compare and contrast to see, okay, what am I saying versus what am I doing? Because we all know that actions speak louder than words, and so that tells a lot about it. That tells a lot about a character. So I would do that, figure all of that out, and then from there, I would go through and, based on the actions and the words that I've said in the show, create my backstory. So who were my parents? Where was I born? It's a play about mythology, so it's not going to be awesome. Sally lives, around the corner with her parents and goes to, a K through 8 school. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a little bit more complex than that. But kind of going through and creating the moments before leading up to where I am now is going to be the coolest part about it.
Do you learn about yourself through playing different characters?
Oh, absolutely.
And what does that process look like? Because the thought had just occurred to me. If you have an example too of something you've learned about yourself, that's incredible.
Well, when you take on a character, you have to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And what that means is you have to take certain elements of your own truth to put it into that character. And so there's been certain elements of truth that I've expanded to make it a little bit more imaginary and make it a little bit more heightened of an experience or an emotion, whether that be, more in that angry direction or more in that content direction. Those elements of truth have kind of sparked things about how I would react. Excuse me, I'm going to rephrase that. I have kind of figured out a couple of things about how I've reacted certain ways in scene work that I didn't think I would react that way, but that's just how my body authentically reacted. And so figuring that out about myself. There's a couple of scenes that I've done where the character is very independent, but something may trigger them in a way it kind of brings them back to their own world. And that's, I've kind of example of 4,000 Miles by Amy Herzog. The character is a very independent person, but when it feels like her world is falling apart, she starts to become dependent on the only thing she knows. And so that, I didn't think I would relate to that, but after completing that scene, 4 weeks, I kind of resonated with the character a little bit more so than I thought I would have before taking it on.
Once you realized that you actually resonate with this character more than you initially thought, did that trigger some sort of reflection within yourself or learning or, self-discovery?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it allows me to kind of branch out into new discoveries about myself.
So, Kenzie, I would love to hear if there are any stories that come top of mind for you as to a time where you learned a lot about yourself through a specific character or experience that you had, in kind of all of the work that you do.
I'm going to use this most recent one. So I just finished my second semester at NYU, and in the grad acting 2 class, we
What does
spent
that
the
term mean?
entire term on Meisner work. When I did a year. It's called Meisner technique, Sanford Meisner. And in acting, there's a couple different methods. You've got the Stanislavski method. You've got different techniques and methods within acting. You've got the Stanislavski method. You've got the Sanford Meisner technique. You've got Uta Hagen. The 6 steps to acting. And there's different approaches and methods click with people, and some methods don't. For me, the Meisner technique kind of clicked with me. I had been studying Stanislavski for a few years before I touched on Meisner. And I did it the last year of my undergrad at Western Oregon University. But in this second semester, getting back on that train of thought, in the second semester of NYU, we did the entire class was just focused on Meisner, and we were assigned one C partner throughout the entire term. It was a 4-month long term, and we spent half of the term doing like Meisner technique exercises, and then we implemented that into the scene work. And that scene we did act for like the last scene of The Seagull by Anton Chekhov, and that experience as a whole, it was so kind of eye-opening to myself as a person, but also who Nina, my character, who Nina is as a person. It allowed me to find different like physical, like intricate details within, or like, what is the word you use? Where you're like, it's not intricacy. It's like if someone's like wiggling their fingers, but they don't realize they're doing it. Mannerisms, I
Quirks,
guess.
mannerisms.
Like the little intricate mannerisms. Yeah, sure. Quirks, manners, the stuff that like you don't like you do subconsciously. I was able to find those little like tiny details within Nina throughout the entire term because I was able to. So it wasn't just like I'm going to do a monologue, work on it for like a week and be, you know what I mean? It was like I spent 4 months trying to get as like honest as possible with myself, and then once I dove into the scene itself, got my backstory, got my circumstance, got everything I needed, then I could use the Meisner technique to really respond authentically and truly as Nina. But like the inner self of Kenzie stepped into the inner self of Nina, and I have never done that before. So it was kind of weird but cool at the same time because I was able to like really like I was able to connect with my scene partner more so than I think I've ever connected with any scene partners, because we had that like Meisner exercise foundation for 2 months prior, and then the last 2 months were just focused on the scene. And it wasn't just like running lines repetitively. It was like we would do repetition with like say one person says I like cheese and pickles. It's a random sentence, but say one person says I like cheese and pickles, and the next person's line is like, I like pickles and cheese. One person would say, I like cheese and pickles. The next person would repeat, I like cheese and pickles. But you wouldn't change unless you're motivated to, which I think, and that's just one part of Meisner. There's a bunch of different elements to it. But that's just like one example of doing that the way we worked. We didn't just like block it and run it repetitively with like just the blocking. We would like there's a lot of trains of thought, but that particular experience doing Meisner with the same scene partner, that was different in my undergrad, which I think both sides of the spectrum are really, really great. But in my undergrad, we were assigned a new partner like every class. Like we worked with 2 to 3 people every single class, and that we were on term instead of semester. So term basis is like the weeks, they're like 11 weeks as opposed to 16. So you have a fall, a winter, and a spring term. That was Western. In NYU, we're on semester basis, so it's a 16-week long course to fall and spring. And so with that being said, I was getting 11 weeks. I was working with like if I worked with 2 people every class or 3 times a week, I was working with 6 people a week, different people every week, as opposed to one partner the entire 16 weeks. And the entire 16 weeks, it allowed me to really, really connect with that person, both like as Kenzie, Kenzie and the scene partner, but also taking that connection that I had built and that trust that I built with that person and bringing it into the scene work. So that's like a very long-winded, but that's one example of how I was like